All right. Hello, everyone that is watching. This is another episode of Torn. I have some new wonderful people joining us, and we are going to have them introduce ourselves. We're going to do it the way we always do it. And I always have to write it down. And I will tell my panelists this time. It is you do the same. If you have something to write with and something to write on, you can do that as well. To start out with, tell your name, your nationality, where you're from originally, and what you do in theater. So just those four things, and I'll repeat them if I need to. And we will start with Noelle.
All right. Hi. That way I don't have time to forget the things that you told us to say. So I am Noelle. I'm just white. I'm not any particular ethnicity. It's just garden variety white mutt. And I am originally from Florida, but have been in North Carolina for about 20 years. And in theater, I direct, act sometimes. I produce virtual readings right now.
Did you tell me your nationality?
Yeah, white.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part. I apologize. I was trying to write something as you were talking. All right, and I'm just gonna go in the order. I'm just gonna go in the order that is on my screen. Lauren Kennedy.
Hey, I'm Lauren Kennedy Brady, and I am white and Scottish mainly. Is my nationality, I guess, with a tiny bit of English thrown in there. I was born and raised in Raleigh, North Carolina. Lived in New York for about 23 years and have come back. And here I am back doing theater back in my hometown. I'm the producing artistic director of Theater Raleigh.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Emilia.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I am Amelia Callens Taylor. My theater name, many people know me as Mimi Callens Taylor. I am African American and I'm originally from Gary, Indiana, home of Michael Jackson. I've been here in Raleigh for 19 years. I act as well as produce locally, and I'm a former board member of Burning Coal Theater.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ian, you are next. Your name, your nationality, where you're from, and what you do in theater.
Okay, my name is Ian Bowater. I am from England. I've lived in California for 24 years, and I now live for the past 8 years in North Carolina. In a previous life, I was the Associate Director at the Theatre Royal Stratford East in London, and then became the Artistic Director of the Shaw Theatre in London. And right now, when I moved to North Carolina, I had spent a lot of time working as a screenwriter. I've got a show out right now. If you want to watch The Black Emperor of Broadway, it's on Amazon right now. But I also run with a partner company called Paul and Ian's One Man Show. And we are just a couple of two old geezers doing some theater.
All right, thank you. And now, were you choosing to be from England as your nationality?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm part of the hegemony.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Jamal?
Good afternoon. My name is Jamal Farai. I am African American by way of Kingston, Jamaica, the home of Bible. No, I'm just playing. My name is Jamal Farrar. I am originally, I'm from Yonkers, New York. I was born in Yonkers, New York, and I moved to North Carolina as a child, and I've been here for a long time, almost over 20 years. almost 30 years. In theater, I'm an actor. I do a lot of ensemble work. Or director. I actually have my first directorial stage play coming up this year. And yeah, that's it. I love theater.
You just threw me. I was about to say, I know I've not known all this time that Jamal was from Jamaica.
When I heard it, I was like, oh, is that what you're going to do for the next hour? You're going to talk with that accent. Oh, okay, that's how we're going to do this. Okay, you better keep it going too. You better keep it up. Okay, nevertheless. All right, thank you, everyone. Now, the reason for me asking you what I asked you, and I tell everyone, and probably everyone except Ian, it's about, I call it programming. I asked you your nationality. Now, and I always tell people, if I'm wrong, this is a discussion for all of us. It's a learning experience for all of us. If I'm wrong, prove me wrong. I'm fine with it. It doesn't hurt my feelings. But looking up the definition of nationality, it's the state or country you are from. Most of you gave me heritage along with a place you were from. But it's fine if you want to claim that with it, but I didn't ask for heritage or a skin tone. I asked for your nationality. But a coworker of mine actually made me realize something. With the exception of Ian, and on my screen, Ian is right below me. With the exception of Ian, we don't have a definition for our country. America is a continent. It's not a country. If you're from Mexico, you're an American because America is a continent. If you're from Canada, you're American because America is a continent. This place is called the United States of America. But we're so bougie that we took the term America. And the funny part is, it's not just us that's bougie. If you look at the news, then it could be a reporter from Ian's home country, and they will say the Americans. And the instant thought is the people that live in the United States. Okay, that's the instant thought. But it could be anyone from Canada all the way down to the tip of South America, because America is 2 continents. And so that's where I want us to kind of go tonight. I want us to open up our minds tonight. I don't want us to, don't think in the box, don't think outside of the box. There's no box. That's how I want us to talk to each other this evening, okay? About everything. And be open and be willing to say, you know what? I was wrong about that. I was wrong in my thinking. So let's go there. We're gonna go there in and outside of theater. One of the first places I want to go, and we going straight here. We're going straight election, y'all. Oh, Lord have mercy. Let's go to these hearings for Supreme Court. Now, I'm going to tell y'all my issue right now. I have an issue, and because I'm in theater, I'm glad I'm in theater because we're able to express what we want in theater, or how we're able to express more in theater. I have an issue with the use of saying the N-word, not saying nigga, but saying the N-word, because there are 3 people on this panel that when we're out in the street and one of Trump's good old boys rides by in a truck, they don't yell out to us and say, hey, you N-word, get out of this country. They don't say that to us. they say nigga. And in my mind, saying, well, we don't say the N-word here. You're dressing it up. You're making it, you're putting lipstick on a pig. And when they talk to Amy and stuff, and her saying, well, the N-word, I don't think that you know, that it was a negative, it was a negative thing when the employee said it to the other employee. I don't think it was a negative thing to make that one employee feel like it was a hostile work environment. You know why you didn't feel like it was a hostile work environment? Because all y'all said around that room was the N-word. You just kept saying the N-word over and over again. Well, you know what? Start saying nigga 600 and 700 times and let your skin crawl like mine crawls, like Mimi's crawls, like Jamal's crawls. And then it will be a hostile work environment for you. Now, I did more talking than I did, a little bit more commentary than I should have. I want thoughts. I'm going to start with, I'm going to go backward and forward. I'm probably only going to do about 2 or 3 people. Mimi, kind of be a little shorter than I was. I'm sorry. Mimi, thoughts?
Well, there's so many. Okay. But I think first and foremost, what really bothers me about her dismissiveness about this is the fact that she has adopted Black children. Now, if you want to romanticize the N-word and shelter your children who are Black from this reality, you are doing a major disservice to these children. And I want to just circle back really quickly. And I love how you synthesized our icebreaker. I knew that the answer to your question was not correct around nationality. However, because so many people in this country conflate ethnicity, nationality, and race, which are not the same, I assumed that what you were getting at was our ethnicity, and that's the way that I answered in kind. The same thing I would say in relationship to Amy Coney Barrett. If you shield your children from their birthright, from their ethnicity, from the thing about them that makes them unique and special, then that means that you don't find value in who they are. And you are of the mindset that you can create a world for these children that does not exist. That's the first thing. So that tells me that she is not someone that is in the same reality that we're in, which means that she really has no place in the Supreme Court. When you cannot even differentiate between how triggering and awful and harmful the word nigger has been over the years to people to specifically Black people, but people of color receive that expletive as well. And for you to dismiss it and you are raising Black children, shame on you. Shame on you, because you're raising some confused children who are going to learn later in life the truth about who they are, because someone else is going to define it for them. And then they're going to come back and say, wait a minute. Why didn't you tell me the truth? And especially in the times that we're living in right now, in this current moment, in this current movement where Black Lives Matter is so prolific throughout the world. And this is not a position where Black Lives Matter began. Okay, when that movement first began, there were a lot of problematic areas about it that a lot of folks, Black, white, brown, could not rock with. Now, post George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, things have galvanized in such a way that has been so uniting for us in the country, because we saw how a man thought that George Floyd's life mattered so little that he could put his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and kill him. And it's seeing something like that shows everybody that when Black people, when some white people look at Black people they don't see a human being reflecting back to them. And so when you talk about dismissiveness, all she did was stroke her own privilege a little bit more to make her feel better and others like her. And it helps to justify her belief that, well, look at me. I adopted 2 Black babies. I'm not a racist. You might not be a racist, but you are filled up with some implicit bias that does not allow you to see clearly. And you are hurting your children.
Okay, thank you.
That's how I feel about that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I tried to not go long, but I'm sorry.
You know what? I tell that to theater people that I don't know why I do that, because I'm a theater person myself. And please, Lauren, any thought from you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation tonight. And when you brought up the nationality thing as well, you know, it's so funny that I just did not even think about saying American. Maybe it's because I have a little shame right now. But no, I am fascinated to hear what you had to say, Juan, about the N-word, because I think as somebody who is white and has had a certain amount of privilege, I have always been afraid of that word. Just there it is. It's just very afraid of it, afraid of saying it, afraid of being in a conversation where it would come up, not only because of how I would be perceived, but also on how I would potentially trigger somebody by saying it. So it's scary to me. And so hearing that using the term the word is desensitizing is really so interesting to me. And I hear that. I really think that makes a lot of sense, because what we do in this country sometimes is try to take ourselves out of it and just be like, oh, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. And in some ways we stop feeling the feels. And so I think your point is really, really interesting. And I was doing ragtime last year, and a number of the white people had to say nigger in the show, and there was a lot of care taken with it. Before the show, we would almost do like fight calls for it, and like, so they would look each other in the eye, and there would be trust and there would be love there. And I thought it was handled really incredible. But the N word, that phrase was tossed around a lot because people were afraid to say it, had to say it in the show. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like I learned something already today by hearing what you had to say, and of course, Mimi, what you said as well. It's really valuable. Okay,
thank you. I'm gonna move on. I'm looking at her because I know she probably wants to, but I'll give you a chance. Noelle, I'll give you a chance in a minute. And I want to ask you something, and it's the obvious. You've lived on 2 different continents. What the treatment of people of color, what's the difference? I know what we see on television. What is you know, what you see on television is always, you know, sensationalized from what actually there is. What has been the difference with the treatment of people of color for you between the 2 continents?
Very little, really, in the first instance. I can remember as a 8-year-old child on a bus with my father, and I saw a headline on a newspaper stand that said, "The color bar strike." And I asked my father, what is a color bar? And even at the age of 8, he was someone who was prepared to talk to me, and said, there are some people who think that people of a different color shouldn't have a job in the place where they work. And then the next thing he said was, and that is wrong, because he was a union representative. So the sort of experiences that I understand here are exactly the same experiences that are in Britain and still are in Britain. Lots of current political situations are defined by people's attitude towards people of color. Now, I go back a bit, and I'm not doing this so you will all watch my movie, but I wrote a screenplay based on a story by Adrienne Elpender, who I was hoping was going to be here tonight, which was called N, which was about the early performances of The Emperor Jones, written by a white playwright who was using the N-word all the time. And I understand from where I come from that is, as the main character said to Eugene O'Neill, we don't use that word amongst ourselves. And of course, Eugene O'Neill, as the white hegemony, said, oh yes, but I've heard it said all the time. And that's where one of the problems lie with actually the use of that word. And it's about actually the use of power and people working against their natural sense of justice for what they actually believe is the status quo. And that's a real problem, because you get that all the time, and you get it in theater all the time. I was hoping that eventually we'll get around to a discussion of the closet racism which happens in theater by people who are all saying, oh yes, we believe in Black Lives Matter and all that sort of stuff.
We will.
Thank you.
We got about 15
minutes. I have to say now. The problem in England is exactly the same problem as it is here, because we were the colonializing, slave-owning culture.
Okay. So I have a question, Juan. Can I just ask you? The idea of you wish people used the actual word and not the N-word. And you know, I actually said the word a minute ago, and I feel like myself in hot sweats, and I feel like disgusting and horrible. And so, do you think that that's like realistic? That, I mean, or is that just you're making a point because like it's a word that like is rejected? Make sense?
When I say use the word, like I don't mean that like you should let it flow like in everyday conversation, but the way you just felt. The way you just felt is the way that Jamal and Mimi and I feel when someone hurls that word at us when we're in general passing. And I don't want to, she froze. Okay, you're back. Okay. I'm not happy that you felt that way, that the sweats and stuff broke out on you, but you know now exactly how we feel when it's said to us. And I lost her. Let me see. Hold on.
You're back.
Okay, you're back. I know the internet thing. Let me see if I can unmute you.
I'm sure you said something really smart and insightful, and I missed all of it.
It's okay.
No, he didn't.
I was saying, what I was saying was the way you felt at that moment is the way we feel every time we hear it. And I'm not happy you felt that way, but I want you to experience that. So now you know exactly what we go through. And so the next play that you do where that word is in there, say if it's you directing it, I'm not saying you can't direct Black people where that word is in there, but the next time you direct it and that word has to be used, you're going to know exactly how that Black actor is going to react to hearing it.
Exactly.
Because it just
which
came
is
out of
why
your...
I said it, and but I certainly didn't mean that people should just let it rip and fly around. That's not what but in terms of referencing in like shows and things like that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And yeah, you weren't expecting to do it. You didn't think you were going to do it tonight. You didn't think that's what you were going to be here for, but it happened and it took you to another place. Well, the same thing happens for the three of us. We're walking wherever, and I just use walking down the street as a reference. It's in a lot of different places. It happens. We're not expecting it to happen. We're not thinking we're going to walk in and it happens, but it happens. And when it happens, we're just like, we're caught off guard. We're like, whoa, what just like, we have to pick up the pieces and try to be dignified and keep going because someone just hurled it at us. And it's like, whoa. But then what happens is we look at TV and, oh, well, we don't use the N word here. And
well, hold on, Juan, real quick. So that the reaction, okay, because all Black people are not a monolith. So where some folk might feel like, let me compose myself and be dignified, and I'm gonna go high because they went low. Others, when they hear that word, are not going to be that dignified, because in addition to what that word does, okay, for me, when I hear it, especially if it comes out of the mouth of someone who is white, that triggers for me the first time I ever heard it when I was 5 years old, out of the mouth of a white child who was my same age. Okay.
Can I just say here that you're talking all the time, Juan, about it being hurled, as though it's actually been hurled as an epithet. And the thing is, the truth of the matter is, it doesn't have to be hurled to be offensive.
Oh, absolutely.
And if a white person is just using it and saying, as Lauren was saying there, that she used it as an example, it still has a hurt to it. And she wasn't hurling the word. And, you know, but the thing is that some words are so toxic that it's hard for people to actually start working through that. I remember the whole discussion about, are you saying the word spelt Nigger, or are you spelling it Nigga, which apparently is supposed to be something different. But it's not different if you're a white person, because you corralled that word to mean something offensive. And that's what we have to address. And that we have to think in our head all the time about how we are received and who we are.
So let me say this. I cannot, in all honesty, say that I have ever, and I'm 40. I'll be 41 this year.
You don't look it.
Huh?
He said you don't look it.
You don't.
I'll be 41 this year. And so throughout my life, I cannot honestly recall a time I have ever been called a nigger to my face. I have not. In my adult life, I have not. I have not ever been called that to my face. One, because just coming up, I grew up in a all-black town, Princeville, North Carolina. It was founded by freed slaves. One of the first towns founded by and chartered by freed slaves. And so, I grew up in a single-parent home. We were on government assistance for a while until my mom got her degree and became a teacher. But before that, we did stay in government housing. And the consensus was if you're ever called that word, you automatically check them, because I'm from the projects, and so if someone was to ever say that word, you automatically just you went off on them. You gave them the business. That's just what it was. That I was taught, and it was put into my head. If somebody ever called you that, the first thing you do, you punch them straight in the mouth, and they'll never say it again. They'll never say it to anybody else again. And so, and then on top of that, I'm 6'4" at the time, 250. So I don't even look like the type of person that you can even say that to and think that nothing's going to happen to you. I just, even though I don't know how I would react if someone were to say it to me, I guess they feel like I look like they better not say that to me, because of fear of what may happen. So I really honestly don't know how I would react if someone said that to me. Maybe I punch them in the mouth. Maybe I won't. Probably. I don't know how I would react if something like that were to happen, because it's honestly never happened to me before. Never.
Can I ask a question along this? So how do you all feel about kind of the concept of it being a word that you reclaim, similar to the queer community reclaiming the word queer as a self-identifying label and things like that? What are your thoughts and feelings about that as a concept?
Word.
Oh. Either or, Mimi or Jamal. Like Jay-Z saying it and stuff like that.
You said the word queer?
No, saying like the rappers using the word nigga and stuff in their rap songs and stuff like that. What is your thoughts about that? Either one, either you, Mimi or Jamal.
Oh, I grew up in like Jamal. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, like I shared, and that was a city that 98% Black. Home of not only Michael Jackson, but the first Black mayor ever, Mayor Richard Gordon Hatcher. So I grew up with a great deal of pride in who I am. Had Black doctors, Black teachers, Black lawyers. And because the Midwest, Northwest Indiana, honestly, because of white flight in the 70s, like many urban cities in the Midwest, became all Black because of white flight. When you went out, because so many times when it came to like the good grocery stores or the stores that had the good meat, you had to go out to the suburbs, go get them, and you experienced extreme amounts of racism, okay? From these people who were once, living amongst one another. And as we all know, race is a social construct. It's made up, okay, racism. And so for me, when I hear nigga, N-I-G-G-A, okay, to what Ian was saying, the difference, is there a difference between N-I-G-G-E-R and N-I-G-G-A? There is, to me. I don't speak for all Black people, okay? In my experience, it has been used as a term of endearment. It has been used as a term of, it's one of those words that you can use so many different ways when you are Black, okay? There's a word that you can use so many different ways that means so many different things. I saw the funniest meme the other day that came down from either Black Twitter or Black something about the different ways to use certain words in a sentence. And like instantly everybody kind of like got it because it was funny. But my experience growing up, okay, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. My experience growing up was just a little different, because I lived in a town that had so much pride in it, but yet on the outskirts of where I lived, there was so much hatred for who I was. So it gave me this shell, okay? And it also gave me this ability to code switch. So I went to Indiana University. One thing I like to say about Indiana, they always say there's more than corn in Indiana, right? Well, Indiana is probably one of the most racist states in the union, okay? Because honestly, it needs to be divided into two quadrants. Like there's North and South Carolina, there needs to be Northern and Southern Indiana. When you get south of Indianapolis, it ain't a whole lot of people that look like me. And when you are from Gary, you grow up hearing the older brothers and sisters of your peers with the stories that trickled down from Indiana University, Ball State, I-State, Purdue. If you have to use the bathroom, don't stop after you leave Indianapolis. Because just 20 minutes from Bloomington, which is where Indiana University is Martinsville, Indiana, which is the home of the Ku Klux Klan. Mm-hmm. So you heard the horror stories. I remember working in news in Indianapolis in the 90s. And whenever we sent reporters out to cover stories in Southern Indiana, if they were Black, we sent them with a white photog. This is in the 90s. So if they had to stop at a convenience store in Southern Indiana, the Black reporter could kind of lay low in the car while their white photog went in to go get juice with them, juice and cookies and things for them. So one thing that I learned when I moved to North Carolina, it was so weird to me. I immediately assumed that everywhere that was rural in North Carolina was racist, because in Indiana, everywhere that was rural was white. But what I learned about North Carolina is that in rural places, Blacks and whites lived alongside each other, and and still do. Really? And so it just, my upbringing was different. I mean, I went to IU, it was 40,000 students, 2% African American. So I learned and I dealt with overt and covert racism all the time. I knew what it felt like to be the only or the other.
Okay.
All of that.
Okay, I want two things. One, I want you to tell me, I want you to finish that 5-year-old story, because that was in my head. I want you to finish that right quick. And then I got to ask Noel something, and then Jamal something. And then I got to get back to you. And then I need to get to the theater stuff. And then we got to get to the debate.
I don't want to hold on to this because I know we got to go. But when I was 5, my mother, there was a city outside of Gary called Hobart. And there was a store there my mother liked to go to because they had good meat sales. And so we go, and you know, back in the day, you could leave your kid in the car. You leave a child in the car now, the authorities get called. So we used to stay in the car while, you know, mama went in the store and got the food and came out. And at this time, there was a young little white girl in the car next to me. She was standing in the car too. And so me being 5 was just waving at somebody who I thought was a friend, because we were both 5. And that little girl called me a nigger. And at 5, I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it wasn't good. I knew it, and I knew it made me feel bad.
Okay, thank you. Jamal, you got to go to work tonight too?
I do.
Oh Lord, and you sleeping? So
I work 16 hours today.
Oh Lord. So your tell them where you work. Can you?
Oh, so I work at a federal prison. I work at a federal prison.
Okay. And
for 15 years.
Okay.
I started out. I've been in law enforcement for over 20 years.
Okay. So is it statistically, is it everything that that is being said, has been said, as far as us goes? And now, you know, I'm talking about this.
It depends on what state you're in. If you're in West Virginia, it depends on which prison it is. I mean, it's just like some states have a lower population of African Americans, and so there are more whites than blacks in those prisons. But statistically, yes, there are more African Americans in prison systems than it is any other demographic, because of certain laws and statutes that were put in place in the early 80s that they've reversed. So I don't know if you guys remember or have knowledge of the crack laws that went into effect in the 80s, to where you had cocaine and you had crack. So the two are basically the same thing. The only difference between cocaine and crack is you're changing the molecular structure of the cocaine, and you turn it into a freebase form by adding an additive to it. Most of the time it's baking soda or something like that, or cut with a laxative, and you're just changing the property of it. And so to have this amount of cocaine and this amount of crack is basically the same, but what they would do was, if they caught you with crack, they would give you heavier sentences. So say if you had an ounce of crack and you had an ounce of cocaine, if you had an ounce of cocaine, they would give you a lighter sentence, but with crack, they would give you a heavier sentence, because at the time, crack was being pushed into the African-American communities because it was freebase form. It was higher. It was a faster high, a more intense high, and it was cheaper than getting cocaine, because for one, you're again mixing the properties and you're cutting it down. And so what that did was skyrocket the percentage of African Americans that were being locked up for basically having the same amount of drugs. And so what they did was they went back and reversed those laws and retroactive, and it started, taking off like major times and got sentences. It was just like a whole big thing for a couple of years. They fought it, and the Republicans and Democrats went back and forth about whether to retroactive it and all that kind of stuff. So it was really a big deal, and it made a big difference. Now you have guys that are getting out. Like, I know for my prison, there's one sector of the prison that I was working, which was like work release. So there was like medium to low security guys. We went from about 260 inmates to probably like one. They started just releasing people. This is like pre-COVID. Then after COVID, they really started releasing guys and just kicking them out, because they would go back and argue, make the argument that crack and cocaine is basically the same thing. So why did you give this guy a 20-year sentence when this guy, who is not African American, had more the amount of cocaine than he had of crack, and he got less time. So from that perspective, I mean, yeah, it's true. The numbers were unequal. It wasn't about equality, but you know, it's all about with the justice system. It's weird because it's all about what you have access to. If you have access and the money to afford a good lawyer, then 9 times out of 10, you can get yourself out of a situation. If you don't, if you have a public defender, not to say that public defenders aren't good, but they're so overworked and so overwhelmed that they don't have the time to put to your case, to fight, and to go back and find those statutes and find those loopholes to get you proper justice.
Okay. All right.
I worked in immigration law for 7.5 years, so trust me, I know about institutionalized racism.
Right.
Right. Okay. Oh, I like that. Mia said school to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
Noel, when did you first realize that you were different than someone else? How young, old or young were you? What was and when was the experience?
Well, I'm adopted, so I think that there is a level of realization of difference that potentially comes at a much younger age than I think with someone else who would have been in my situation who was not an adopted child. So yeah, I definitely remember when I was like 5 years old, someone bullying me because I was adopted. So that meant that, you know, my real mom and dad didn't want me. But I was a sassy little brat. So my answer was, no, really, I do know that my real mom and dad want me because they paid lots of money to get me. How do you know your mom and dad wanted you? They're just stuck with you. So, so yeah, pretty young.
You were born to be an attorney.
Right,
I was
exactly.
An attorney, paralegal, but yeah.
Hey, it's still I like that one. I like that. Okay, one of y'all answered something, and it took me into and Ian brought it up. So let's go on into theater for our last however many minutes we're together. So the reason why Torn started, George Floyd happened, and Lauren asked me, said that we needed to start doing something. We needed to get panels out, and I said I wanted theater people to do it, just theater people. We do our plays, and we do great following the scripts, but I wanted theater people to tell how they really feel and to talk about their own personal experiences and feelings with what's going on in the community, but also what's going on in theater. Now, I'm going to ask this of everybody. And I'm going to go around the room. The room. I'll say this. Try to keep it short. Starting with you, Noel. Exactly. Yeah, right. There's 6 of us up here, long-winded, all of us. Have you ever experienced racism inside the theater? It didn't have to be toward you, but have you ever experienced it inside theater?
I don't know that I've really been aware of anything egregious, but I've certainly seen more things in like microaggressions or situations where I've wondered, did this person get this role because, like, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, is this casting director just not creative? And their default was, you know, cis white man. And so this other person that I thought was a much more interesting actor, did they not get it because of color? Or, so I've sort of seen those sorts of things, but it's all been subtle.
Okay. Thank you. Ian, same question.
I have seen it all the time, whilst it's been masked by liberal.
You can speak freely language too.
Yeah, okay. I saw any number of theatre companies telling us that they were all about Black Lives Matter and that they were up for the Black Lives Matter movement and all that sort of stuff. And my first question was, what were you doing before? And that's the issue. And it's not about whether you put on black plays or whether you put on or will you hire a black director for doing something. It's about the whole of your institution. Does it have black members on the board? Does it have black people who are informing the culture? Not that they are necessarily informing the culture to put on so-called black theatre, because so-called black theatre tends to sort of like move it off into an area where it's sort of like, it becomes, one of the best words for it is to ghettoize it. And I don't want that to mean as a pejorative term, but it's sort of like, you say, oh, we do this kind of theatre and we do black kind of theatre. Well, all theatre is theatre, and that, you know, you can have anybody playing any role and any character. You can have any theatre playwright coming into it. I happen to have the good fortune of belonging to a community of theater that was my major job was at the Theatre Royal Stratford East. And in 1988, we had a director there who did black plays written by black people. He employed black directors. He had black people on the board. And it wasn't because they were black people. Mm-hmm. It was because they were people who had skills and ability in that area. His name was Philip Headley. He was a white gay man, and he produced so much theater, which was about the black community. Five Guys Called Mo was went to Broadway because it was these people. And he didn't do it because, oh, I'm trying to do it because they're black people. He did it because he lived and worked in the East End of London, where there were black people who wanted to go to the theater. And it was as simple as that. And they didn't want to have it about the black Romeo and Juliet, or they didn't want it to have to be a black play that was about something that they didn't know about, like the black experience in Philadelphia. They just wanted to see black people on stage, and they wanted to connect with them and to be part of them, because theater is the world and the world is the theater. And that's what should have been happening all along. That was happening from 1985 in London at that theater. I ran a theater and we did the same thing. I didn't know until about 2 years ago that I produced the first black Cinderella in Britain, because I just happened to do the traditional pantomime of Cinderella, and I cast it the way I cast it, and it was full of black people. I never thought I'm going to do the black Cinderella, which is, I think, what people do a lot of the time. They ride on the back of ethnicity and say, oh, look what we're doing. Aren't we marvelous? Well, you're not marvelous. You're just doing something that you should have done a long time ago.
Well, it's tokenization, isn't it, really? To go in and say, oh, I want to make sure that I'm, casting the black Romeo. No, just cast a person that you want them to bring their whole self to this role.
But you have to have that mindset right from the beginning, that there's nothing special about being white and being in the theater.
Thank you. Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Can I just
Lauren?
Say real quick?
Okay. Go ahead, Mimi.
So I think that it can be a both and. I do think that situations like that don't need to happen on accident. I think that there needs to be some intentionality behind it, and I do think that because otherwise, you're applying, not you, but people could be applying this colorblind thing to it, and that's worse. Yeah. It's like, well, I don't really see that you're black. You just happen to be black, and we just happen to have like 5 black people, and wow, that worked. Wow, we got lucky, So you got that. Then you've got the whole, well, let me just check a box and do this one black play in our repertoire for the year. So yeah, that don't work. But if you have some intentionality and you intentionally decide that you're going to apply a racial equity lens as a value.
Yes.
Mm.
If you apply a racial equity lens as a value, then it finds a way to weave its way throughout everything you do. From hiring to your board, to who you cast, to who you get to direct. Because I know myself, I have been in more than one of the black plays in the season that was directed by a white director. And I'm not saying white directors can't direct black plays, but again, I say, when you apply a value of racial equity, then it weaves its way throughout the ecosystem
Yeah.
of the culture of who you are as a theater.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah.
I think that's the intentionality of this is the way I see the world. This is the way we want our audience to be reflected to is so important. You know, and Juan, you were going to come to me, so I'll just like add on to that. You know, I grew up in the South. Like I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there was always some air of racism in my experience growing up. And I get like emotional thinking about it. It's one thing that I had to really when I moved to New York, I mean, I was always progressive and liberal and very outside of my family. But, you know, it was one of those things that you do work for the rest of your life to just make sure that's not in there ever, you know, because you grew up around it. You were influenced around it, even though you knew it was wrong. You still have to constantly make sure that you are towing that line. And so so I guess I'm saying that because you sort of, when you say, have I seen racism in the theater? Not specifically, no, because I think we also see what we want to see. And I was always looking for equity, always looking for equal, you know, across all boards. That's something I just have intended on. And I'm sure there was stuff that I didn't pick up on that I just didn't want to see. And so now as I'm running a theater and I'm in a leadership position, you know, to what Mimi said, it's really important to me to take a look at my board. I do have a diverse board, but it can be better, you know, and COVID has forced me to let go of many of staff members. And my intention is to hire people of color when we are hiring people back, whenever that is, the spring or next fall. I'm intentionally saying, I'm diversifying my staff in a way that we are representing. And it's not just me, a white lady, you know, making the decisions. In a way that we have always tried to tell all the different stories, whether it be LGBTQ or African American stories or female stories, female writers, Black directors. I have as an artist always tried to put those forward, but obviously can do more. And we're even changing our mission statement to make sure that we are including that as we move forward into this new era. So yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I just add to that? When I was in London and I ran the Shaw Theatre, which was a 500-seat theatre on the edge of the centre of London, we specifically allocated our budget to have work which was for ethnically diverse work. We did work which was specifically for women, and we did work that was specifically for the what we would now call the LGBTQ community.
Or something like that.
If you,
close.
Exactly. But the point is that you have to, if you're in a position like I was then in the 80s in England, like Lauren is now, you have to say, we get resources from these people, and often we piggyback their funds on telling them that we're doing something about diversity and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to genuinely say that this money is going to be allocated to the work of people of color,
mm-hmm.
to the work of women, to the work of the gay community. And if you don't do that, then you're actually failing yourselves, you're failing the actual business that you said that you were going to do, your application for funds. You have to do that in a positive way. And unfortunately, I've sat on these boards which actually give out money to grants and stuff and things like that. And I can tell you that they don't even do that. The boards are not diverse enough. They're not presenting a set of policies which are about different aspects of the community. And most of it is about a general idea of bourgeois art. And we have to change that with them. We have to offer them something else.
I'd actually love real quick, I know it's not my turn, but I would love real quick to circle around to what Mimi was saying about intentionality. And I think that's such a great way of putting it, because it's such a fine line, right? You don't want to just like hope that Black actors will come to my theater company, but you also don't want to play the game of being like, and here's my token Black person, right? Like, I have a Black friend. So I think that's such an interesting way of looking at it. So I wanted to thank you for that perspective. It's really interesting, because I mean, it is definitely something that I've been striving for. And you just put it into words in a really, really great way. So thank you.
And I think too, these are opportunities for deeper dives into racial equity training, into understanding how white supremacy can surface, and ways that it manifests. Right? There have been times where implicit bias comes in when it comes to directing. You know, I don't know, for those of y'all who know me, know I'm a woman of size. I, you know, have a really large personality. And when I enter the room, it's known. But my voice is classically trained and has a 5-octave range. So when I sing, you know, there are some folks who expect Aretha Franklin to come out. Okay. And I actually had a white director say to me, "Give it to me."
Springfield.
Say what now?
I said, or Dusty Springfield.
Oh, okay. I don't know who that is, but okay. Well, anyway, okay. Well, good. I'll take this. But I have had, you know, white directors say to me, "Belt it out. Give it to me with some soul." And I'm like, what? Because there is this stereotype that someone that looks like me is supposed to sound a certain way. So that's just an example, okay, of how when you're dealing with certain material, why a racial equity lens is important, but also a deeper level of education in terms of dealing with, like, I love what you said, Lauren K, around the fight call at the beginning and the trust building when you had to use that word. That right there, that shows that this is not just about I'm trying to put on a good show and you're just gonna do this, you're gonna do it the way we practiced it. No, because of course the more the trust, the better the production.
Yeah.
And the more that you understand that this person is not trying to harm and hurt you because of this hurtful, toxic word, right?
Right.
So having that foresight comes from some deeper dive education that I do think is a lifelong learning opportunity.
Absolutely, lifelong.
Yep.
So two things. And Juan can attest to this. I worked with Juan. Me and Juan worked with a group called Peers and Players. And what they do is they go and they train these Fortune 500 companies like SAS, Cisco, and all of these companies on how to deal with their employees. We are basically actors who come in and train them, literally train them on how to respond to certain situations and feelings and scenarios. We have scenario training with them. And what I find, what makes those companies successful is that they're intentional about investing in that type of training. They paid us pretty good money to come and to do that with them. But the thing about it is that just the thought to have that type of training says a lot. It says that you want to be better at communicating. For me personally, I don't think it's necessarily an issue with doing Black plays and incorporating Black plays in your theater company or in your season. To me, and this is just me personally, I feel like the type of plays, one of the reasons that I choose the type of plays that I choose to invest my time in and to direct, I choose plays that show African Americans in a successful life. So many times we get the Color Purples and we get those type of plays where they're struggling or they're coming up or they're in slavery. I've seen those plays. I watch those plays. I enjoy those plays. They're fun. But a lot of times I'm like, I want a play to show us on the other side. Why can't we do a play where you have a bunch of Black business owners, Black Wall Street, show that side of the demographic. Stage plays that are more catered to those to show us in our glory days when we were successful, operating independent of white society. Tulsa, Oklahoma, the glory days of Tulsa, Oklahoma, to show, not always showing black plays where you're struggling or in a subservient role. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, 100%.
And so, again, not to take anything away from those classic plays, Color Purple, Pearly, all of those plays are great. But to really capture the essence, you have to show your willingness to understand and to be optimistic.
Can I
show
go to what Jamal said there? Because, and this is not to plug the movie anymore, but The Black Emperor of Broadway is about Charles S. Gilpin, who was the first Black actor to work on Broadway in a serious play. And he was the first Black actor to direct on Broadway. Now, I tried to get all of that into the story, but it goes through the filter of film producers and that what they wanted to present, and also the ideas of I had to try and stop the film festivals from giving a blurb about the theater, which just said, oh, he didn't do this, he got sacked by Eugene O'Neill, and he ended up a failure. He didn't end up a failure. He actually was just dismissed because he was a Black man. But he ran a movie, a play that was produced on Broadway and did 500 performances, which he directed. And I couldn't get people to do that, but they wanted to talk about that he drank too much and that he, was somebody who was kind of affected by his good fortune, when in fact he was a really solid man. And the movie was able to, sometimes the story doesn't work like that because there were parts of the story that the technical qualities about it, about how they were protested by the Klan and all this sort of stuff. But everything ran through a white filter of directors and of film producers who were wanting to say, they called it the Black Emperor of Broadway. We didn't want to put the name Black in there. We wanted to call him the Emperor of Broadway because he was the first guy. And if you look at the poster's a Black man on the poster. You don't need to say Black in the title, but we don't control that anymore. It's all controlled.
As someone who's
Jamal.
Go ahead, Jamal.
As someone who has the power to, if you own a theater company, and I'll just drop this little jewel off, I remember I watched the interview with Steven Spielberg, and when he did Red Tails, right? The story of the Tuskegee Airmen, and how much pushback he got from the networks.
Exactly.
And for that, he used his own money. He had to use his own money. They would not give him the money to make a all-Black hero story. This is true. You could go and you could research this. They did not give him the money, the funding that he wanted for the movie. He used his own money. The way that you can connect and you get a bigger artist, that's the reason that Black Panther was such a huge success, because it showed Black people in a hero role. Harriet Tubman,
exactly.
12 years a slave. Yeah, it'll get you an audience, but not the audience that Black Panther got. That changed the whole dynamic. When you show, I promise you, if you do a show that shows Black people in a hero role, they will flock to it because it's different from what they're used to seeing.
Well, it's 8:41. Guys, because I'm letting you guys go early. I don't want to, but I am. This is no, because this is real good.
Presidential debate.
Yeah, I want to see that mess. I want to see that mess. I do. I'm sorry. Did I say that? I'm not supposed to say stuff like that, Emma. I just want to see somebody. I just want to see somebody hit that mute button. That's really all I want to see.
That's the real show.
That's the real. Thank you. I just want to see Kristen hit that mute button one time. This has been great because and Noelle, did we talk about Brave New Classics at all?
Not really. Considering
I want you to talk about that right quick.
And you're in my next one too. Yeah.
Just tell people what it.
Started a theater company during a pandemic, so we could do virtual readings of classic plays. So yeah, we just did Eulalie Spence, which she was one of this hugely influential members of the Harlem Renaissance, but she continually differed with a lot of the opinions of other people about the sort of theater that she should be doing. She was this highly, highly educated immigrant from the West Indies. She had like multiple master's degrees. She had she didn't play. And she wrote all of her works in the dialect of the Black community in Harlem who was moving up from the South, around the late turn of the century, early 20s time period. And her plays, most of them weren't even published. The ones that were published, most of them have only been produced a handful of times. She is brilliant and never done. So we just did that, and now we're doing The Rover by Afra Ben, and Juan is playing Don Pedro in that, and he's awesome.
Nice.
So she just started her theater company. Lauren has hers. Jamal is having his directorial debut. Ian is just Ian is just doing it. Ian is everything.
He's promoting his movie.
Yeah, he's got a movie that I haven't seen.
A movie.
Who hasn't
got a movie?
Well, I like that there was so much awesome synergy here tonight. Like I've loved meeting both Ian and Noelle and Jamal as well. And Jamal, I want you to come direct at my theater company this play you're talking about that celebrates the Black experience. I think that would be amazing. I'm your gal.
And then Mimi had to go, everyone. So we definitely want to thank her as well. I want to thank you guys. Lauren, are you still, what are you calling it? Is it still going to be called the same? Is it still going to be called Kennedy Theater?
No, it's just going to be called Theater Raleigh. We're just going to take that name and put it on the building. And we are going to have a number of performance spaces and rehearsal spaces. And hopefully we'll be able to host other theater companies here as well. But we're just going to call the building the Theater Raleigh.
Okay. All right. It's gonna be called Theater Raleigh. Okay. I don't know. I thought maybe, hey.
So now it's the company and the building.
Okay. All right. So Theater Raleigh is new space for Theater Raleigh. I'm happy to see that. And I didn't get a chance to see it yesterday, so I got to ride by there and see because I
anytime. Just text me and I'll give you a tour.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I would like to say thank you to everybody for taking the time. Jamal, Noel, Juan, and Lauren, and also Mimi, who was there before.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting discussion.
Yes, it has.
And stop here.
And yes, it's different. And I know you guys probably thought like, oh God, what is this going to be about? But it's an open discussion. And I hope you guys take some of the things you've heard tonight back with you to your prospective theaters and, you know, incorporate them into your theaters, and definitely speak with any of us about anything that you heard any of us say tonight, because we've got to, one of my philosophies, in order to change the world, I've got to change, you know, my circle first before I can change the world. And so I want to start with that. All right, guys.
Juan, you're the best.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I will see. Ian is gone. Ian went to get him something to drink. Probably, I guess. I don't know.
He's like, I'm out.
He's like, I'm out. Y'all ain't wearing me to death. Oh, she already got hers. But seriously, guys, thank you. And yes, theater probably is going to be another year before it comes back. I hate to be pessimistic, but you know, let's be realistic. I mean, I don't see anybody wanting to sit right next to anybody they don't know before next fall, realistically. So
the one thing about COVID is that everybody's paying attention now to some of these really important social conversations that we're having. You know, we're all sitting at home, we're talking to each other, and we're listening. And I think, maybe that's part of why this is happening.
Yeah, yes. That's true too. That's true too. And I do hope
it's going to be different. Doesn't mean that we can't make art.
Right, exactly. And
still come together as a community. We can still make things happen, just not in the same way we have been. So it's going to force us to be a little creative sometimes.
That's right.
Right. And I hope
sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes that. You got these billion-dollar companies, social media companies, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all of these things. They market and bombard you, and they make you watch and look at stuff even when you don't want to. So we take that concept and that idea and put it towards theater and find creative ways to give people an opportunity to enjoy the art. Even if they might not even know they like it, but just find a way to come into their home.
Get it out there.
More accessible. We can watch things from the comfort of our living room in our pajamas, right?
Right. And that's one of the other things that that was one of the other reasons for doing this, is because I wanted the average everyday person who had one thought about theater to realize that we're human beings as well as actors and actresses and theater people. And when they see us as real people, they might want to come to the theater when we get back in there as well. But also I wanted to bring some theater people together, because like when y'all are saying y'all don't know Mimi, and I'm like, I know Mimi, and she doesn't know y'all. And I'm like, well, I know y'all. And I'm like, I want theater people to come together, and I want all the theater companies to get along with each other. And you know, we don't realize how much we need each other until we don't realize how much we need each other until this happens, you know?
That's right.
And so we do.
That's right.
So,
well, you're doing that for us, Juan, so thank you.
I'm trying. So, okay, guys. Well, they getting them ready. I'm looking at the TV now. They getting them ready. So,
all right.
Let's do what we do. All right.